Shane, one last thing before we call it a show. We got to kick it over to a highly entertaining interview here with Chris Phillips, host of the Spurs Up Show. This is a good one here. All right, we're pleased to be joined once again by Chris Phillips. You know him, host of the Spurs Up Show, the outstanding South Carolina, not only football, but overall sports show. Chris, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate you.
Mike, I appreciate you having me, man. It's always a pleasure. Obviously, it's Carolina, Georgia week, and it just hits a little bit different. Obviously that border battle between the two schools. But, man, congratulations to you, by the way, your success. Been seeing you guys pop off, and I know we're just both glad it's the season, my man. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, let me ask you this, Chris. I really wanted to get your thoughts on this. Who do the Gamecocks hate more, Will Muschamp or Dabo Swinney? Who do they want to win over more?
I think it's still Dabo. I think it's definitely Dabo for sure because he's rocking the orange and purple. But I tell you, somebody did, I think, over the summer, obviously when you get in the off season, everybody's looking for something to talk about. There was somebody put out a top 5 most hated by South Carolina fans, and Muschamp was up there. It's crazy to think he was up there. Ray Tanner was up there, who's actually the current AD. So I tell you, man, it's wild. But no, Muschamp's definitely up there, and certainly we've had our fun this week picking at him with the dogs coming to town, and this will be his first visit back. But yeah, it's funny. I tell people, Mike, all the time, I disliked Muschamp before it was cool. You might remember. I mean, obviously you remember. So I now it's the cool thing to do. I was on that train way before everybody else. So yeah.
And we were on a call about a week ago or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, Chris, and you gave me some hell for KJ Jefferson for Heisman. Now that you've seen him in person tear through the Gamecocks, I would imagine it's not as funny now, is it?
It's not quite as funny being on the, like literal receiving end of his talents and his athleticism yet. I was watching, and maybe this is an over-exaggeration or a stretch, but I was like, this guy's Cam Newton Jr. I mean, that's what he looked like to me. Just, the Gamecocks just bouncing off of him, and it's funny. He only quote unquote threw for, I think 165 yards in the game, but it's because they didn't have to throw him, and he went 18 of 21. So it's like he obviously showed he can throw the football, and obviously he's just one guy. Just seems like you can't bring him down. You know what I mean? So he's a dynamic dual threat guy. He's got some really good players on his offense to help him as well. Rocket Sanders, we got a heavy dose of, and those receivers on the outside. So Arkansas is a really, really good football team, and of course a big physical offensive line. But yeah. KJ Jefferson's the truth. I don't know if he's going to win the Heisman, but he is. He's got my respect for sure.
Now let me ask you this, because I haven't spoken to you, Chris, since Texas and Oklahoma officially coming to the league. And I promise we'll get to the Gamecocks more on this season after this. But what's your thoughts on that? Do you like it as a South Carolina guy? Because, you see mixed emotions. Some people say, well, how the hell are we going to win the SEC? It's difficult now. How are we going to do it with Texas and Oklahoma joining the league? Personally, I think, Chris, adding them, we already know the SEC is a cut above everybody. I think you add those two, they're a natural fit for the league. And, here's a perfect example I use, Chris. South Carolina right now, they recruit well, but at times, they lose a battle to, Georgia Tech or Florida State or Miami. That may still happen when Texas and Oklahoma join the league, but I guarantee it's going to happen a hell of a lot less because nobody of elite caliber is going to go want to play in these damn junior leagues when they could go to the mini NFL. I think, while some people look at it as this is just going to make the SEC too difficult, I think it raises the entire conference. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I like it. I think you got to embrace competition, obviously, and I think it's going to create some really fun, unique matchups. I mean, we just saw Alabama, Texas, and everybody thought that was going to be a blowout. And give credit to the Longhorns; they took them down to the wire, and you could argue maybe they should have won the ball game. But I mean, from the South Carolina perspective, listen, it's already tough, man. I mean, it's you already know what you're up against, so. I mean, I just say you might know more on this than I do, but I'm curious if the pod thing is going to happen at any point. Are they going to keep 2 8-team divisions? But I mean, either way, I think you just got to, you got to stay and fight and embrace competition. And I mean, who doesn't want more good football? And I think especially from the fan side of things, right? We're looking forward to taking trips to Austin and Norman and So, I mean, I'm all for, and I think outside of just football, right? I mean, South Carolina's played Texas in baseball, and, Oklahoma's, I think they just went to Omaha, obviously has a really good program there. And then on the hardwood as well, Texas and OU have done good things. So, yeah, I think from the SEC standpoint, I know obviously for you, it's great for content, right? It's two more rabid fan bases to entertain and talk to and talk crap to from time to time. I'm sure you'll be throwing a couple horns down here and there, but, and I've got horns down merch too. So maybe it helps me, but, no, I think, like you mentioned, man, it's the way college football is moving with the expansion, and you add two storied programs like that. I think you tip your cap and give your kudos to the SEC for being kind of out ahead of everything and making that move and making that splash, and Greg Sankey being the real MVP. So I think it's great for the league, and I think as a fan, you just got to embrace it, right? Because it's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah. Now, recently on the Spurs Up show, after suffering first loss of the season, there's always panic. There's panic across all the SEC when a team drops a game, even if it's on the road against what I think is the second best team in the SEC right now, a top 5 program in Arkansas, at least this season. Can you tell us why you are not hitting this panic button after a tough loss on the road to one of the best teams in the country?
Yeah, Mike, I think it's just one of those things where I looked at the season and I felt like since the summer, when I dropped my preseason predictions in July, I looked at this game against Arkansas, and I'm like you. I didn't know if Arkansas, though, was a top 10 team, but I knew they were going to be a really, really good football team. 9-win, maybe 10-win football team. You look at what Sam Pittman's built there, what they did last year. I didn't like the matchup since the summer. We knew line of scrimmage was a problem area, a deficiency. Even if the Gamecocks made strides, we knew it was going to be a tough task. And again, going into Fayetteville. So I predicted a 1-2 start. I thought early in this year, the offense, it was going to take some time to click. Obviously, again, you look at the offensive line and the struggles on the line of scrimmage, and the teams that you are playing, you were going to learn a lot about yourself, but I think I just had realistic expectations coming in. And again, you just tip your cap and give credit to Arkansas. That loss in Fayetteville does not define this season for South Carolina. And again, it was never a good matchup for the Gamecocks. So you were able to draw some positives. Of course, there's no moral victories at all. Draw some positives on the offensive side, seeing a guy like Rattler have some success, Antoine Wells emerging. I think the biggest area of concern right now, though, Mike, is the defensive front. I think you couldn't stop the run very effectively last year, but I really thought that group, while they wouldn't be elite by any means, I thought they would take a positive step forward. And it's really disturbing when you see they've given up 200 yards rushing against Georgia State and then 295 against Arkansas. And it felt like for the Hogs, Mike, it was easy. I mean, they were just pushing South Carolina around. No big deal. Now you lose Mo Kaba and Jordan Strong on your defense for the season. And now, of course, you got the Georgia Bulldogs coming to town, so it gets no easier. But I think, again, most realistic Gamecock fans understood you were going to have to weather the storm early. I don't know many folks that were picking South Carolina to start anything better than 1-2. So I think I just had realistic expectations coming in, but obviously still there does need to be improvements across the board, especially when you talk line of scrimmage. But I think as we go throughout the season, there are going to be more favorable matchups for South Carolina. And then, Mike, to top it all off, the reason I'm not panicking, it's year 2 of the Beamer era, man. It's too early to panic. I still believe even coming out of Arkansas, this team can still get to 7 wins, maybe even mess around and get to 8. As we all know, I mean, look, Mike, at the SEC, Texas A&M just lost to App State. I mean, you just never know. Florida last year, right? Florida early on, I know they were a different football team with a different coach. Played Alabama close, though. People thought, oh, man, Florida's this, that. When the Gamecocks played them, they were a train wreck. So, I mean, you just never know, man. It's such a week-to-week game, and I still think there's pieces on this football team, to get to at least 7-5. So, yeah, I'm definitely not hitting the panic button yet on this team in this football season.
Wow, a level-headed take from you, Chris. That's unexpected, but I do appreciate it because I think you're 100% on. You just played a hell of a team. You're going to play another hell of a team here on Saturday. But Speaking of that, why is it such an issue, you think, for the Gamecocks to stop the run? They just don't have the bodies up there. I mean, they got a couple 5 stars. So, I don't want to call those guys busts by any means. They can't do it all by themselves or anything. But what's your thoughts on why South Carolina has had this issue for going on 2 years now?
Yeah, Mike. I mean, that's been the maddening issue because I can look at the offensive front and say, maybe, you know what, maybe they are just kind of limited talent wise. You look at some of the guys, I'm not going to name names, obviously, but as a whole, there's a reason. I'll say this, and I said this in the midst of that game on Saturday. You look at the Gamecocks recruiting class right now, Mike, and it's all offensive linemen and defensive linemen, and it's a class ranked 15th. Like they are addressing the problem in recruiting, and that's just what you have to do. You have deficiencies in those areas, but on the defensive front specifically, Mike, I do my position unit preview series and I grade each position unit. And I think I gave the defensive line like a C, maybe a C plus, but a lot of folks came down on me like, God, you're sleeping on the D line. Why are you being so hard on the D line? And I'm like, I need them to show me something, because it just feels like every single year, Gamecock Nation, we're hyping up the D line. You have these flashy names and what the stars are telling you in recruiting services. And it just doesn't feel like we're getting the most out of what we have. And so I think early on, Mike, I'll tell you this, I think we do have very capable bodies up front. I think deficiencies at linebacker hurt this football team. I think that's been a problem area for quite some time. And I think they're obviously working to upgrade that in recruiting as well. But, I don't know. I mean, it's a great question, man, because Shane Beamer too, and obviously I'm not coming at Shane Beamer, but he spent the entire preseason talking about the defensive tackles, and they're the deepest, best position group on the football team. And it's like, you're at least not seeing that right now. And I just felt like the entire summer, like, I'm fine with you saying that, but if you're going to spend the entire summer saying that, you got to see improvement in the run defense. I mean, you just have to. And, they know they've got to stop the run better, obviously, but it's definitely been disappointing for sure. And it's something that Gamecock fans, we have a tough time wrapping our brains around, because like you mentioned, man, there's a couple 5-stars up there and guys with talent and guys that are hyped up. And for whatever reason, it just has not clicked.
Now, this may be crazy, Chris, but, we all think of Georgia as this rushing machine. They're actually 10th in the SEC this season in rushing. Of course, maybe that's a product of game plan and everything. And Stetson Bennett is just incredibly hot right now. Is it crazy to think that if you're South Carolina, you dare Georgia to beat you on the ground? Because, I mean, Stetson, he just diced up Oregon.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be quite their game plan, because I feel like if you dare Georgia to beat you on the ground, they will. The numbers say they will. I think they'll gladly take it. Yeah, listen, it's a Herculean task for the Gamecocks this weekend, or we'll take a Herculean effort, I should say, because I'm just looking at their numbers right now. I mean, like you mentioned, Mike, they're averaging 395.5 pass yards per game, just 129.5 on the ground. But like you mentioned, Stetson Bennett, I think he's very underrated. People call him a game manager, whatever. I know he's on a great team, but the guy does one heck of a job. You know what I mean? He does a heck of a job. He's played great football to this point. So I do not envy the position that Clayton White is in this week, the Gamecocks defensive coordinator, trying to figure out how he's going to stop them and slow them down. I feel like for the third straight week, I'm saying the same thing, Mike, though, is that if they can run the ball at will, you just have no chance. And it's going to be one of those demoralizing, like it felt like to me, and everybody wants to look at the Arkansas game and point at Spencer Rattler and Marcus Satterfield's play calling. And I understand, right, especially when you lose, everything gets nitpicked. But you made this point as well on social media about, how many points the defense allowed. And it never felt like we had Arkansas in a position where like they were on their heels and we were on the attack on defense. Like, I feel like Arkansas just kind of controlled us and moved us around. And unfortunately, I feel like it could be more of the same with Georgia. So, it'll be interesting to see how they attack. Unfortunately, you saw the report from Shane Beamer yesterday. You got some questionables in the secondary, including Cam Smith, your preseason All-American. Now, I think he's going to be good to go. But this is a banged-up football team, and unfortunately, they're facing a red-hot Georgia team. So averaging 41 points per game, by the way, and they have not allowed a touchdown on defense as well. So I tell you, you look at this Georgia football team, and I don't want to over-exaggerate and give them more credit than they deserve, but I don't feel like it is when I say I don't know that I even see a weakness. And I think, Georgia plays their A game. I don't think there's anybody in the country good enough to beat them besides Alabama. I think they're that good. And I picked them to go undefeated in the regular season for a reason. So, I guess it's pick your poison. I mean, I guess if you want to dare Georgia to run, I guess you can, but I don't know that's going to be a wise decision. On that note, by the way, Mike, because I know that Prize Picks is one of your partners as well, and I'm not trying to give them a free ad, but they're over-under on Stetson Bennett passing yards against South Carolina, 294.5. I thought that was really high because, like you said, Bennett is hot, but like, I don't think Georgia's going to have to throw. I mean, but if nothing else, I think it's a benefit for the Dogs because I feel like they probably know they can run. You know what I mean? So if Bennett's clicking too, they've got options. So it'll be interesting to see how Carolina attacks it, though.
Well, speaking of quarterback play, I have to ask you about Spencer Rattler. Your thoughts on him after 2 games? So much hype and anticipation.
Right.
I don't want to say I'd say he's just been kind of inconsistent. He showed the talent, but hell, the first game he was running for his life. I thought against Arkansas, there was opportunities down the field. Either him or his receivers just not on the same page. A couple overthrows. He makes a couple of those throws. Maybe it's a different ball game.
Right.
And secondly, with that, are you surprised at all? I mean, it's not like it's all the fan base, but we're already seeing Marcus Satterfield. We got to fire this guy after 2 games. And again, the defense lost you the last game. And again, if Spencer is maybe a little bit more accurate, it's a different story. So surprised to see heat coming for the OC already.
Well, number one, no, I'm not surprised at all because many folks came into this season fairly or unfairly. Marcus Satterfield is guilty until proven innocent. When you finish, listen, last year, and you know this, Mike, as well as anybody, coaches don't get 5, 6, 7 years to figure it out. Let's get our guys in here. Like, if you're not winning by like year 3, a lot of the fan base wants you out. There's just no patience anymore, right? So, you finish 116th in offense last year, and a lot of folks came in this season. They already were out on Satterfield. So any sign of not having immense offensive success, they were going to come at him. In regards to Rattler, I think he's played fine. I mean, I've been asked a lot this week, through 2 games, has he met the expectations? Has he met the hype? And I'm like, well, I guess it kind of depends on what your expectations were and how much you hyped him up. I mean, I think, like you mentioned, all things considered, when you factor in no running game, an offensive line that, especially in week 1, could not really pass block for him. I thought they were better against Arkansas, not great. I think all things considered, he's played fine. Like you mentioned, he's been inconsistent. And you go on the road in the SEC and you lose by 14 points and you miss a couple of those long shots. And for example, you play Georgia this weekend, you're only going to get a couple of those shots a game, and you got to hit them when you do, right, to beat a really, really good football team. But the thing about the game against Arkansas is that, his play is highlighted or nitpicked because he had to play perfect to give this team any chance to win because the defense was so bad. You know what I mean? Like, if the defense had a great day and he has the exact same numbers, he got a fantastic game, right? Like, Rattler battled through with the early adversity, missing those throws to lead us to victory. Like, the entire storyline's different. So, this is a big week for him, Mike. I think we'd all agree the national spotlight will be on him. He's going up against an elite in college football, and he's obviously got, for his personal reasons or his personal career, big dreams and aspirations for the NFL. So this will be a great test for him. But there's 10 other guys. I put a lot of it on 7. It all comes down to him. But yeah, he's been running for his life a lot and not getting support in a run game. And I still think the receiver room is not as deep as it needs to be. I mean, it was great seeing Antoine Wells last week flash. I think he'll be a guy on a weekly basis that can help you. They desperately need Josh Vann I don't know where he's at. They need him to get going. They need to get Jaheim Bell involved. 0 catches last week. I mean, it can't happen. So I think they've got weapons on that side. Again, to this point, though, I'd say Rattler has been fine. I think he's got more in the tank, obviously, and can be better. But he looks like, to be fair, he looks like a guy in a brand new offense with a brand new supporting cast playing for a brand new offensive coordinator. So I think realistically, we expected it was going to take some time. And Mike, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I know we're talking this Georgia game, but I tell you what, maybe the most important 2-week stretch of this season is going to be the 2 games against Charlotte and SC State, just for this team to kind of figure it all out. You know what I mean? Because after that, good luck going into Lexington trying to figure it out. Good luck playing A&M and Tennessee and Florida. Like, you need to find out who you are in those 2 weeks where you really get into the heat of SEC play. So I've been fine with Rattler's play, but dude, it's SEC football. I mean, again, the fan bases, I'm not shocked at all how folks have reacted. And, again, I would just try to ask folks, keep a level head and let's just see what happens. I still believe that Spencer Rattler will have a good year for this team.
So what is the recipe for South Carolina to pull the stunning upset this weekend over Georgia, and what's your prediction for the game?
Well, I think we need Georgia to be out at Buddha Bar all week in Athens and show up a little fat and happy. You know what I mean? No, I think you look back to 2019, Mike, and I made this point that the spread has now dropped from 26 to 24.5, which ironically enough was the spread back in 2019 when the Gamecocks went to Athens and just did the unthinkable. And weird things happened, right, for that to happen. And it took the Gamecocks even going to overtime to get the win, and Blankenship had to miss the kick and all that. You need weird things to happen again. Georgia can't play their A game. You need Georgia to, again, whether it's they're overconfident or maybe Oregon was just that bad or whatever, you need Georgia to play sloppy. If Georgia plays their best game, it won't matter. So you need the Dogs to be sloppy. You need to muddy the game up, force a couple turnovers, whether that's interceptions from Stetson Bennett or for whatever reason. Hey, weird things can happen, right? Georgia's putting the football on the ground for whatever reason. I think you need a defensive score. I think Beamer ball. You need a special teams score. Spencer Rattler's obviously got to be at his elite level. The defensive line has got to play their absolute best game. And all those things happen, and you might have a shot late in the fourth quarter to steal one or pull, I think, what would probably be the biggest upset in the college football season, at least to this point, for sure. So a lot of weird things need to happen, and sometimes they do in South Carolina, Georgia, but you can't predict that, right? You can't bank on that. I'm certainly not. It's funny you asked me the score prediction. I haven't really nailed it down, but I'll go ahead and give you an early one. I think 41-10 Dogs. I took the under. I think the under hits, but dude, all you can go off is what you've seen to this point. Georgia hadn't allowed a touchdown yet. I think the Gamecocks do score one, but I think Georgia's elite in all three phases. I don't see a position group that South Carolina has an advantage at. I don't know how South Carolina's going to move the football. I mean, they're going to have to spread Georgia out. How much success will they have? I don't know. And then there's nothing. I mean, I hate to say this, but with the vast just advantage on the line of scrimmage, it almost feels like a name your score game for Georgia. I mean, it really, and I hate to say that, but I just think the trenches, it's just such a problem area for South Carolina. It's so glaring. You got to think Kirby and his crew and Monken. I mean, they're just sitting there licking their chops, man. They know what South Carolina's problems are, and I think they're going to do everything they can to expose it. And everybody want to talk about Georgia's defense, and are they going to be as good as that defense was last year? That historically great defense, no. But I mean, this year's crop of new guys is just next year's draft picks, right? Like they're just that good. So I've got 41-10. I picked it way too close last week, Mike. So I'm going in with even more conservative predictions. 38-13, 41-10. What the hell's the difference? I don't see the upset happening is all that really matters. So I think the Dogs win. I think they win big on Saturday at Willie B.
Well, let me get you out of here on something a little bit more positive, Chris. Let's say, if South Carolina, the goal right now should not be to win the damn East as much as you want that to happen. That the goal needs to be climbing the ladder. And the only way that's going to happen is you got to snap some of these streaks. I'm thinking Kentucky, which is on the road. Mm-hmm. A&M comes to town, and they're trending poorly right now. Tennessee comes to Williams-Brice. Those three games, which one? If I were right now to guarantee you that South Carolina is going to win one of those games, which one do you think is the most realistic for this team to beat this season?
Well, I think I've got to go with the one that I picked in the preseason, and that's Kentucky. I know it's on the road, but the reason I picked it over the summer is that in the quarterback battle, I thought Rattler's going to outduel Will Levis, and one of the reasons too I picked that as a victory, and because I think A&M terrible loss to Appalachian State. But A&M's a better football team than that. They get it figured out at quarterback. I mean, you probably know more than me. I haven't kept up with the Aggies too close to this point. I don't know. Is Haynes King going to be the guy again? I don't know, but they've got talent over the place. I think Tennessee late in the season. I think the Volunteers are for real. I think I picked them in the preseason to go 9-3, finish second in the East. They're clicking right now. Obviously, great win over Pittsburgh. So I'd go Kentucky. And I think, again, that 2-week stretch playing Charlotte, SC State, I think that's going to be a great opportunity for this football team to heal up, right, to get rested, for a lot of guys to develop confidence. So I think South Carolina should go into that football game at 3-2, feeling as good as they felt all season. So out of those three games, again, I picked South Carolina to beat Kentucky in the preseason. I know Kentucky looks great right now. I kind of wonder what Kentucky is, right? I wonder what they are, because Florida came crashing back down to earth. I actually took the Cats plus 4.5. I felt like, dude, Florida jumps from unranked to 12th. Like, come on. Like, really? Are they that good? And, I mean, Kentucky was the beneficiary of Anthony Richardson sometimes just doesn't know how to throw it to his own team, I guess. But, either way, the Cats are good, no doubt. You got to respect Mark Stoops. They've owned South Carolina. But in that battle between those two quarterbacks, I think it'll be a great game. I did pick the Gamecocks in the preseason. I'm going to stick with that. And out of those three you mentioned, I think the best chance does come, believe it or not, on the road in Lexington against the Wildcats.
Well, Chris, you're always welcome here because you didn't say Tennessee. Can you tell the audience where to find all your work?
So we're at the Spurs Up Show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, of course. We're on TikTok even. You want to go check that out. YouTube as well. The podcast drops 3 times per week, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. That's under the name The Spurs Up Show. And then we have a daily live show called The Daily Crow, which airs noon to 2 on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And you can kind of think of that sort of as your South kind of version of Paul Feinbaum, because we take calls and questions, and we have the callers are kind of the personalities of the show. And, I love when opposing fan bases call in and, the week of the games and give their perspective and talk a little trash. And I mean, that's what makes it fun, man. So, but at the Spurs Up Show all across the board, thespursupshow.com, we've even got a store, tsus.store. I think all fans could enjoy the Horns Down merch. So, but yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to obviously chatting with you next week. I know we'll do it next week after. Hopefully, like you mentioned, the Gamecocks have pulled maybe the biggest upset of the college football season. And yeah, man, like I said, anytime, would love to talk ball, and appreciate you having me.
All right, Shane. So just want to say